Hey there, everybody. My name's Chris Dunleavy, and welcome back to The Way It Is. Here's some stuff you need to know about. Good news today in the race for the coronavirus vaccine. Moderna Incorporated announced that their vaccine looked to have about a 94.5% effectiveness rate against COVID-19. This makes it the second vaccine to announce a rate above 90%, joining Pfizer, who made their announcement last week. What comes next is going to be the companies seeking permission from the U.S. government in the upcoming weeks to clear the vaccine for emergency use. Now, if you're like me, you're thinking, great, so what happens once they're ready to go and get this thing distributed? Well, that answer is complicated. So in terms of the vaccines themselves, both of them are going to be looking like they'll require 2 shots, taken weeks apart from each other. Government officials have said that they look to have around 20 million doses of each vaccine around as early as late December. So the Secretary of Health and Human Services has said that the ideal people who will receive the vaccine are people that are at most at risk. So, you'll see people 65 and over and healthcare workers, essentially. But Dr. Fauci has called the news a light at the end of the tunnel. He's also said, however, that it could take until the spring or summer for this vaccine to be available to everyone. Tragedy is striking across Central America at the moment. The region is currently facing a Category 5 hurricane named Iota with maximum winds of up to 160 miles per hour in an area that has already faced the powerful Hurricane Ida less than 2 weeks ago, which left many homes destroyed. The storm has also renewed another conversation about climate change, as it was reported earlier in the week that this storm broke the record of 2005 and made 2020 officially the year with the most recorded named storms in history. Homes and businesses are being destroyed. It's a terrible situation down there, so I'm going to leave a link right up here. Click that if you'd like to donate. If you can, I encourage you to do whatever you can. I'll be donating as well, so thanks. Experts say Peru is in the middle of a constitutional crisis, after its president was impeached by Congress last week over allegations of corruption, triggering massive protests in the streets against the Congress and leading his replacement to resign after being named. Centrist Francisco Sagasti was elected by their Congress and sworn in on Monday evening, which appeared to put a stop to the crisis. The real test now for Sagasti is going to be trying to repair his country's economy, which has just been simply devastated by the coronavirus. At least 82,000 and no more than 90,000 claims were filed in a sexual abuse lawsuit against the Boy Scouts of America, alleging decades of sexual assault and abuse. The Boy Scouts organization had previously said that they were deeply sorry and has spent the past 3 months on an advertising campaign urging victims to come forward. As the group goes bankrupt, a compensation fund will be set up to help victims whose claims are verified. Many experts also say that the claims will have a greater amount than the total number that has been filed against the U.S. Catholic Church. Hate crimes in the United States have risen to the highest levels in more than a decade, said a report from the FBI released on Monday. 51 hate crime murders were committed in 2019, with over 7,314 total hate crimes committed. The crimes were previously at a low in 2014 with 5,479, but have risen since that year. A privacy activist group in Europe has filed complaints against Apple over what they claim is iPhones tracking users without their knowledge or consent. They claim that Apple's identifier for advertiser codes on users' iPhones are similar to website cookies that store user information and have accused the codes of being accessed by Apple and third parties. Apple denied the claim, saying it was factually inaccurate. In other tech news, U.S. safety regulators are looking into complaints against Tesla for their touchscreens failing and the loss of rear camera display in the vehicles. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration reported that up to 159,000 cars could be affected, and it is currently in engineering analysis by the group. Tesla so far has remained silent about the issue, but did expand its warranty on the vehicles in case of the computer failure from 2012 to 2018 in the attempt that it was speculated to fend off a class action lawsuit in California. Ethiopia has plunged into civil war in recent weeks, with 550 killed by the Ethiopian military, reported by them, but the total could be higher. Amnesty International reported last Thursday that it was likely that almost 100,000 civilians had been killed by the fighting. An estimated 25,000 refugees have fled to Sudan. The conflict began when the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was elected in a populist uprising, and about 2 weeks ago, in the north, the Tigray People's Liberation Front held democratic election after Ahmed postponed the democratic elections due to what he claimed to be the COVID-19 pandemic. Ahmed saw the elections as defying his authority and ordered airstrikes and a ground offensive in Tigray, the region in the north of the country. So the whole region is pretty much in catastrophe. And now for our top stories. The positive news about the vaccines could not come at a better time, with the United States leading the world with more than 11 million cases. When the world is looking at around 55 million, making up 20% of the total cases worldwide. Most of these cases have come in the past 2 weeks, with states like California and Texas both having over 1 million cases alone. In response, governors are expected to increase lockdowns in the upcoming weeks, which we're going to see on November 19th, with New York City public schools being closed due to an increase in cases in the city. And preparing for what Dr. Fauci has called a crucial stretch in the fight against the pandemic, with California and Michigan once again closing down indoor dining, and Philadelphia even banning most indoor private gatherings. So far, we've seen two very different responses from two men that claim to have won the election. Both men have urged Congress quickly to pass a relief bill during a lame duck period in Congress. Side note, I just learned what lame duck meant. Just want to say it means the time after the election when people are either coming into or leaving office. So nobody really wants to do anything. And yeah, it does not mean the nerdy duck that got his lunch money taken by the chickens in high school, as I had previously thought. So, yeah. Anyways, here's where the two differ on the issue. President-elect Biden has formed a coronavirus task force and is prepared to hit the ground running after inauguration. President Trump has threatened to withhold the vaccine when available from New York State because of Governor Cuomo's desire to have a board of medical officials review and certify the federal vaccine once it is released. I know this comparison sounds biased, but it's the truth. Don't get me wrong, it's not like Biden's been doing everything perfect. I'll give you some personal commentary here, which I try to avoid, but I think in the interest of fairness here, it's necessary. When the AP called the election for Biden, you saw a lot of these big celebrations in the streets of cities, and, you saw his speech where he had a crowd gathered. I don't think, and I could be wrong, to be fair, but I don't think that he addressed the fact that a lot of these people, however, were wearing masks, but they were not social distancing. I'm just trying to be fair here, because it's not something a lot of people in the media have called him out for, and I need to be fair to both the two. Obviously, I have a personal opinion. I like one of them more than the other. I don't think anyone likes them equally, to be honest. I don't see too many people on Twitter having a really hard time choosing between the two of them. They're both such great candidates. I don't think anyone really has that problem. So, my job is to make sure you never know which one I like more equally. So that means from time to time, I have to criticize both of them, because both of them are not perfect. They're human and they make mistakes. In other news, President Trump has still refused to concede the election to President-elect Biden, despite calls from prominent Republicans in both the Senate and the House. We'll get to who actually won the election later in the show, but for now, many have called for him to begin preparing resources to be transferred to the Biden administration during the transition. His campaign has filed lawsuits in 5 different battleground states, with some being dropped, others dismissed, but some still remain. We'll have to wait and see what kind of, or if there will be any effect that this could have on the results of the election. Most experts still say that it's out of reach for President Trump, regardless of any recounts or overturns that could occur. In basketball this week, Chris Paul was traded to the Phoenix Suns from the Oklahoma City Thunder on Monday. And I need to say this: Oklahoma City fans, are you good? Do you need medical attention? Are you okay? Are you all right? Just for fun, I'm just gonna throw out a few random names here. None of these have any connection or relation, even whatsoever. Just one slight thing that keeps them all in common. James Harden, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, Paul George. These are all people you've had on your team in the past decade. You could build a freaking all-star team with the amount of people that have either gotten traded or went to free agency. Are you good? I mean, Karen took the kids, And by Karen, I mean the Clippers, Warriors, and the Rockets. And by the kids, I mean half of the best players in the NBA. Are you okay? Jeez. Oh, I feel for you guys. I really do. In golf, Dustin Johnson won the 84th Masters tournament this Sunday, where he was rewarded with a green jacket. On another note, it was not this man, as I was informed by my friends. I don't know who that is. I don't watch golf. Comedian Sinbad suffered a stroke on Monday, hoping he recovers well and gets well soon. And finally, Harry Styles wore a dress. People had thoughts. Some of them were nice. Others were not as nice. I'm not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole. Because if I say he looks good in the dress, I'm wrong. It's a dress. And if I say he doesn't look good in the dress, I'm also wrong. Because it's Harry Styles. The man is gorgeous. He could wear a hot dog costume, and he would still be amazing. So I'm just going to steer clear on this one. Now then, for a more serious note, for that segment I had mentioned in my announcement video, I've been trying to think of a name for it. And I don't know why, but it just popped into my brain the other day. This quote from this man, Rodney King, who some of you probably know. He was beaten at the hands of police officers in the 90s, which sparked a whole series of riots across Los Angeles. So just, if you will, take a look at this video here of what he had to say after the riots started. So,
I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along? Can we stop making it horrible for the older people and the kids? And I mean, we've got enough smog here in Los Angeles. Let alone to deal with the setting these fires and things. It's just not right. It's not right, and it's not gonna change anything. We'll get our justice. They've won the battle, but they haven't won the war. We'll have our day in court, and that's all we want. And just I love, I'm neutral. I love people of color. I'm not like they picking me out to be. We've got to quit. We've got to quit. After all, I mean, I can understand the first upset for the first 2 hours after the verdict, but to keep going on like this, and to see the security guard shot on the ground, it's just not right. It's just not right, because those people will never go home to their families again. And I mean, please, we can get along here. We all can get along. We just gotta, I mean, we're all stuck here for a while. Let's try to work it out. Let's try to beat it. Let's try and work it out.
That is a great man. In the face of violence against him and an unfair justice system, he pleaded for peace among everybody. And I think America has just always been a divided country. It has been since the Revolutionary War. I mean, you had patriots fighting for freedom and loyalists to England. We've always been divided, and it always leads to violence in the end, inevitably. And you have these great men, like it could be George Washington, it could be Abraham Lincoln, it could be Martin Luther King, or it could be Rodney King, or even President Barack Obama. Men who see this dream and this vision of a country where we can disagree, but we can still come together for the sake of human decency and respect each other without the need for violence. So, in memory of that dream and of Mr. Rodney King's words, this segment is going to be called Getting Along to Get By. And I think the place we need to start is with this election. Because I think so many people are just divided on this specifically. So let's get started. The most important thing this year that's happened has been the pandemic. That's not up for debate. A lot of people going into this election, I think, saw this almost as a response to the pandemic and the job the Trump administration had done and what people individually thought. And it was almost more important to some than the past 4 years President Trump had put in. And it was on that basis that a lot of people, cast their vote. And the thing is with this, you had two different groups of people here. You had two different groups, radically different views, voting for two candidates that, in all honesty, could not be any more different than each other. It was bound to be a recipe for disaster, even at the start. I mean, never mind the pandemic affecting voting, mail-in voting occurring, and one candidate claiming fraud before it had even begun. So, tensions were high, to say the least, before the election even started, and they got even higher after it was all said and done. And I think the most important thing that I can do with this segment is to just get all of us here to come to a consensus based on facts, based on evidence, hard evidence about who won. So, with that being said, it's important to consider every claim of voter fraud and investigate it to make sure, God forbid, that's not the case, and if it is, to figure out who's responsible and, make sure they're punished and make sure that we have a fair and decent election. Now, with all that being said, it is extremely likely, if not 100% certain, that Biden won the election. President Trump can deny this until the cows come home, but the fact is, Biden won fair and square. So with that, there are three things that we need to answer. Three questions. 1. How and why did Biden win? 2. Does President Trump have a right to challenge the result? 3. Are his claims of voter fraud based in fact and accurate? So, let's get started. How and why did Biden win? I say we can break this down first by the locations that he performed extremely well in, and then look at the types of people that voted for him. So to start off with, even though it means absolutely nothing, the popular vote. Uh, Electoral College pretty much wipes that out, but it's a good indicator, so we'll use it. Uh, Biden did extremely well in the popular vote. He beat President Trump by almost 6 million votes. Uh, that is almost double the margin of votes that Trump had over Hillary Clinton in 2016, and more than President Obama's margin over Mitt Romney in his 2012 reelection campaign. So, that was definitely a decisive victory in that sense. But here's the thing, you look at the Electoral College, which is what everyone's talking about right now, and you're going to see a much closer fight. If you really look at what it ended up coming down to, I think you're going to see three places in particular. You'll see Pennsylvania in play until the very end, as it had been in the 2016 election. Although this is nothing like the 2016 election, let's be honest. This whole year, and not to mention election, has just been abnormal. But, yeah. So you also are going to see the Midwest. That is definitely up for grabs in most presidential elections. Definitely a hot area to be contested. Biden did well there when he needed to, and he took back Wisconsin and Michigan for Democrats when they had failed to Republicans in 2016. And finally, you'll see Arizona, where Trump won by almost 4% in 2016. Biden was able to flip Arizona, and I think a couple of people predicted that going into the election that would be the case, and it paid out. It worked out for him. So now let's look at who voted for Biden. He pretty much swept Trump in the 18 to 29 range. He beat him by almost 24%. Biden also won about 52% of independent voters. That was a category Trump won in 2016. Trump also won white people. I don't really think that's much of a surprise. I think what was surprising to a lot of experts was that it was the same high amount that he had won by in 2016. I don't think a lot of people predicted that would be the case. They definitely thought that there would be kind of a revolt in the suburbs type of thing, which did not end up happening, factually. You're also going to see that Biden brought Catholic voters to within 1%, a category which Trump did very well in 4 years ago. Biden also did well with female voters, winning almost 55%. But the category where he really dominated was with first-time voters. He beat Trump there. He beat President Trump there 57% to 40%, which is definitely saying something. Biden won 56% of people that did not vote in 2016, saying he was able to increase turnout, which he desperately needed to do going into the election. So, quick disclaimer, these numbers I just read came from the Associated Press, most reliable, unbiased source I know and can find. There's a 0.4% margin of error with those numbers, so make sure to keep that in mind. As for why Biden won, I really don't know. I think we can speculate on a lot of different things. I think the election was, as I said before, definitely a referendum on coronavirus as much as it was on the past 4 years of the Trump administration. I think you look at people that voted for Trump before coronavirus and had their minds changed with his handling of the pandemic. Those are people that will potentially go and vote for Biden. So, again, that's just speculation. They really need more polling data to know for sure. Now for our second question. Does President Trump have a right to challenge the result legally? The answer is yes, of course he does. If you want to ask if he should, that's a whole other story, depending on who you ask. In my opinion, I think we should ask the men that would know best themselves, former presidents and presidential candidates. So, former President Obama has said in interviews that Trump has caused damage by refusing to concede, and it is a threat to democracy that he isn't doing so. Former President Bush has said that President Trump is in his legal right to seek recounts, file legal challenges. but he also urged the American people to come together for the sake of the nation's future. So, there's two differing opinions there. Um, I I quite honestly don't know what to say here. If you want my take, it's that I don't know. I'm not a legal scholar. I'm not a formal president. I think the two arguments here are pretty much that him not conceding is a threat to our democracy, and he's taking away resources from Biden to fight the coronavirus, which is the argument that liberals are making, and Republicans are making an argument that he's pursuing his legal rights. He has every right to do so and to seek recounts if he believes, as he does, that the election was rigged against him. That brings me to my final and most important point: voter fraud. President Trump has been claiming it since before the election even started, with him just assaulting the idea of unsolicited mail-in ballots. So, there's a couple different ways we can do this. I think the easiest way is that we just go through his Twitter and look at statements he's made and just make sure they're accurate. It's not a jab on him. It's just to make sure everyone watching knows the truth, finding the truth of what's going on with this election, and just making sure what he says is true. So let's just get started. Is here on the screen. We are up big, but they are trying to steal the election. We will never let them do it. Votes cannot be cast after the polls are closed. So this one, so far, there has not been any evidence to suggest that any Democrat has conspired with elected officials to rig tens of thousands of votes, which is what it would take to even make a difference in some of these states that are contested. Also, according to the American Civil Liberties Union, you have the right to stay in line after polls are closed to cast your ballot. As long as you're in line before the polls close, and as long as you don't leave that line, you are still allowed to vote. Anyways, if you look at the current election margin right now, it's 290 to 232. Very high-scoring football game, right? So, in Arizona right now, Biden is up around by 11,000 votes. That's one of the states Trump has contested. If you assume there's voter fraud there, and something happens, the state is turned over to Trump, that brings Biden's lead down to 279, in which he still has he's still winning the election. In Nevada, Biden won by around 40,000 votes. Even if there's a recount, it's really not likely that amount of votes is going to suddenly go to Trump. Georgia right now, it's still too close to call. That's the most important thing I can say. Georgia is still too close to call, and if you see any media outlets out there calling Georgia, it's just too close, irresponsible to do so. So right now, that's still up in the air. Keep that in mind. In Michigan, over 100,000 votes. I mean, that one's pretty much just out of reach. I find it very hard to imagine that over 100,000 votes were false, but, anything's possible. So maybe, probably not. Minnesota, he won by over 300,000 votes. I mean, that's completely out of reach. Now for the tough one, Pennsylvania. Biden won this state by around 70,000 votes. However, the majority of votes that pushed Biden over the edge were those that were mail-in ballots. Now, they were not counted on election day because of laws in the state saying that votes were not allowed to be counted until after the polls had closed, absentee ballots. So, obviously Trump has made claims that there is fraud in the state and his people have not been allowed to watch the polls. We'll get to those claims in a minute. So, I mean, if something happens and Pennsylvania goes to Trump, that's going to give Trump 263, and that'll put Biden back down to 259. So, That case, there's still one state up in the air. You need 270 votes to win. So that means Georgia, which is still just way too close to call. In that case, it's going to come down to Georgia. So Wisconsin, Biden won that state by around 20,000 votes. I mean, it's possible, but it is unlikely in a recount that Trump would manage to make up that difference because, that's just a pretty solid margin of votes. You don't typically see that amount in a recount. So if you look at this map, assuming that there's no voter fraud, or at least there's not enough to impact the results of the election, Biden won, even if a state like Arizona or Pennsylvania could be overturned. Now, if both of those states were overturned and Trump was able to win Georgia, that's pretty much the only scenario where he could become president. That still is very unlikely to happen. But let's talk about some other claims that he's made that might or may not be true. Here's one. Last night I was leading, often solidly, in many key states, in almost all instances Democratic run and controlled. Then, one by one, they started to magically disappear as surprise ballot dumps were counted. Very strange, and the pollsters got it completely and historically wrong. Again, this is not true. The states that Trump was leading in, like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nevada that he's referring to, are areas that new mail-in ballots would take a long time to count due to election laws in some areas that stipulate that mail-in votes cannot be counted until polls close. So that's why we're seeing these high numbers of votes coming in for Biden at the last second. Also, I think something that a lot of Republican voters have been wondering is why are so many of these mail-in votes going for Biden? Why aren't there more going for Trump? Well, here's where you need to think about the way the campaign played out. So, the way Biden campaigned, he encouraged most of his voters to either vote by mail or vote early. That way they could be safe on Election Day and not be exposed to coronavirus. Lowering exposure to the virus, decreasing the amount of people in polling places, stuff like that. Trump did not make that a central part of his campaign. He used a more traditional kind of rally-style campaign, encouraged people to vote in person, all of that, to make sure their votes were counted legally. So if you also look at the 8 Associated Press exit polls, people that are surveyed, leaving the polling booth, I think they did it a little different this year with phone calls, something like that. So if you look at those polls, 77% of people that were polled were in favor of mask requirements. About 36 of people that were in favor of mask requirements, 36% of those people voted for Trump. Now, so 77% in favor of mask requirements, you've got another 23% that said that they were not in favor of mask requirements. If you look at that number, 87% of those people voted for Trump. So I think it's reasonable to make the case that, no matter what, there are an amount of people that support Trump that felt comfortable enough to vote in person and didn't want to vote by mail. They weren't concerned about the coronavirus, something like that. So it's reasonable to make that argument, and that would be why an amount of mail-in votes wouldn't be going for him like they would be for Biden. If you also take into account that 41% of voters voted by mail in this election, given estimates, 67% of those people have been polled to vote for Biden. It makes sense that you'd see a high amount of votes coming in late for him in these areas. You know what? I will give the president one here, though, about the polling. He is 100% right about that. The pre-election polling, they all had Biden in a landslide. They had a blue wave. They had suburban revolt. That you saw a lot of things that did not happen for the most part. We still don't know if Democrats have the Senate or not. It's still a really close margin, and it's pretty unlikely that they do. Their lead shrunk in the House of Representatives, and you had a lot of Republican candidates elected there. That has not been the case. And that clearly, I think we can all agree, this has not been a landslide for Biden. It's just a fact. So he's completely right there. The polling was completely off before the election. All right, let's move on. Here's another one from President Trump. They are working hard to make a 500,000 vote advantage in Pennsylvania disappear ASAP. Likewise, Michigan and others! Exclamation point. Now, for this one, to be fair to the president, and because I think they've actually done a pretty solid job of their polling, I'll go with Fox News here and their election results. I looked at their live blog from the election, tried to find what I could. He is correct. He did at one point have a 500,000 vote advantage in Pennsylvania. However, that was before mail-in ballots were counted. Now, in Pennsylvania, there were over 3 million mail-in ballots. So, considering how tight that race was there, it's not a stretch to believe that out of those 3 million, knowing what we know about how many people voted mail-in for Biden, there could be more than 500,000 going to Biden and not as many to Trump. That would definitely shrink his lead by a lot. It's not a stretch to assume that that is what could have happened. These were legitimate ballots that were allowed to be received as long as they were postmarked by Election Day. Another one from President Trump. We have claimed for electoral vote purposes the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, parentheses, which won't allow legal observers, end parentheses, the state of Georgia, and the state of North Carolina, each one of which has a big Trump lead. Additionally, we hereby claim the state of Michigan, if in fact there was a large number of secretly dumped ballots, as has been widely reported. So according to the claim here, around 500 ballots were dumped in Michigan. Election officials for Michigan and the county where they were alleged to have been dumped have denied this. So it's important to look into claims like this, but the thing is, when you look at the original tweet that claimed that this had happened, there's not photographic proof, there's not evidence, there's just pretty much a claim with no evidence, no proof, no eyewitness account or testimony, so it's pretty impossible to verify whether that's accurate or not unless anyone comes forward with any of those things. So, we kind of have to assume that's not true. Here's another one. Any vote that came in after Election Day will not be counted. So, according to ABC News, 21 states allow late counting of ballots as long as they are postmarked by Election Day, except for Iowa, which wants them to be postmarked the day before, and even California allows ballots to be counted up until 17 days after Election Day. Also there's obviously military officials that serve overseas. They're allowed to have their ballots counted after Election Day. So keep that in mind. I easily win the presidency of the United States with legal votes cast. The observers were not allowed in any way, shape, or form to do their job, and therefore votes accepted during this period must be determined to be illegal votes. The U.S. Supreme Court should decide. I can't. So this is a much repeated claim here by Republicans. Places where observers weren't allowed to watch for votes. Poll watchers, in fact, in Detroit, they claimed a lot of fraud there. He used the words "dirty cities" like Detroit and Philadelphia, something like that. Along those lines, I'm paraphrasing. He said, so in fact, in Detroit, there were poll watchers removed. One man was removed for wearing an all-white face mask, covering his head completely, and shouting. He was allowed to enter, but he began shouting about corruption immediately after entering, so he was removed for causing a disturbance by police. And one woman refused to pull her face mask completely over her nose, so in accordance with coronavirus rules, they, threw her out. You can say what you will about that. That's kind of a hot and cold topic, I think. So protesters were also banging on the windows at this voting center, and you might have seen this photograph up here go viral where you had people covering the windows of the election center. People were saying that was, done as a hoax to prevent people from looking in, all of this stuff. The election officials' reasoning for this was that there were people videotaping and taking photos of the people not only counting the ballots but trying to take pictures of the ballots themselves. So, people felt intimidated inside there. They covered the windows with cardboard. Um, Also, another thing to keep in mind, there were still poll observers in the room. Poll watchers with credentials weren't allowed in after the election doors were closed, but people that were in there before they had closed, uh, they were still in there. Former and current officials testified, election officials have testified that there were still over 100 Republican observers still remaining in the room. They were allowed to remain behind vote counters within 6 feet of them, coronavirus distance. So in Detroit, these claims are false. There's no other way around it. They're false. Um, the Trump campaign has also made the same claim in Pennsylvania, where on Tuesday, the state Supreme Court rejected their claim. They claimed that election observers were not allowed close enough proximity to the ballots to see what was occurring. However, the court ruled that because state law only stipulated that observers be in the room and not at a certain distance, the law was not violated. So, another thing to note about the court, there were the vote was 5-2. So, 5 Democrats agreed with this, 2 Republicans did not, and wrote dissenting opinions. You can read those online if you'd like. As to why, I personally did not want to go into them because I actually spent the week reading all of Amy Coney Barrett's court rulings for another video, just trying to get to the bottom of that, and I was pretty exhausted, so I did not do that. Sorry. I'll put the link down below if you'd like to look at the dissenting opinion in the interest of being fair, obviously. Alright. Where are the missing military ballots in Georgia? What happened to them? You know what? He's got one here. I'll give it to him. He's kind of right about this. As the military ballots, 7,786 military ballots did not make it to the specified county where they were intended to be by the legally retired time for them to be counted. It's not really clear whose fault this was. I'll be honest. I'm being 100% honest with all of you. It's always my job to do that. I really looked into this a lot. I searched the web for whatever I could. I could not find any accurate information. I will say, that's not, that's one county, but yeah, that is a good amount of votes, so I'm sure it could make a difference, and I do think that's something that should be looked into. So I honestly was not able to find out what happened there. But also the Georgia Secretary of State, there have been a lot of other claims that have going around that haven't been true. So he's a Republican. Just to be fair, he set the record straight. I'm quoting him here. There were no ballots in a dumpster in Spalding County. Some envelopes were found in the dumpster, but nothing happened in that county that impacted the election. Sterling had also said that, according to log files, no one had touched a system in that county after October 31st. Spalding had said, there's no double count in Gwinnett County. Gwinnett ballots appeared to be double counted because the reporting system had counted pages instead of ballots, and that made it appear that there were twice as many ballots, which was not the case. So in Fulton County, he also had said the county had uploaded the results first and then reconciled the results afterwards, and had figured out that more than 100 ballots had been scanned incorrectly, and also found backs of damaged ballots that were waiting to be counted. So the Secretary of State's office has said that the county had given a full accounting of ballots, and observers from both parties and from the state had overseen the issue to make sure it was corrected. So I'm gonna get to. By the way, I just want to real quick. There are obviously a lot of problems here, and I will be getting to them at the end. I'm gonna say a little. This election's kind of a mess, and I'm gonna talk about that at the end of this video. So stay tuned for that. I won this election by a lot. This one. At the moment, as I said before, Biden is winning by 290 to 232. President Trump would, again, need to win Georgia and have both election results overturned in Arizona as well as Pennsylvania to win the election. This is looking very unlikely, if not impossible, to happen, especially as most of his lawsuits have been dismissed for a lack of evidence and things of that nature. Another one. Since when does the lamestream media call who our next president will be? We have all learned a lot in the last 2 weeks. Yeah, we really have, honestly. But I'll say this. The Associated Press called this election. It's a projection. It's not an official call. Technically, he's right. The president is not officially picked until December, where, officials verify results, things like that. But the Associated Press has been calling elections since 1848. They have called 43 out of 56 total presidential elections, not counting this one. They've gotten all 43 right. They didn't even call the 2000 election when everyone else in the media had. You choose who you put your faith in and things like this. Me, personally, I put my faith in the guys that have gotten it right for the past over 150 years. It's my personal preference. Although, you know what? Don't get me wrong. I agree with him on this. The media sucks. The media sucks. It's the reason I made this channel. I think that's the one thing in America everyone can kind of agree on. At least one form of media. If you watch CNN, you think Fox sucks. If you watch Fox, you think CNN sucks. I think they're both have their good spots and bad spots, but I think a lot of people are dissatisfied because of the bias, things like that. Also, speaking of Fox News, a lot of people on election night called them they were pretty quick to call Arizona for Biden. So if they're the hare, then I think that makes Nevada the tortoise because, they took forever to figure out who won there. So President Trump has claimed that there was massive voter fraud in Nevada. The Republican Party down there has also said that they found 3,000 people in Clark County that had moved, that had cast their ballots there, moved away from the state. So here's the thing with that. Some of these ballots included on the list of 3,000 were members of the military serving overseas, which they did not take into account. Also, according to Nevada law, people who move 30 days before an election are still allowed to vote in the state, as well as anyone who might be away for college, for that matter. Now, Dominion voting systems. This is one I'm going to guess you keep hearing about, because every 5 seconds I see Sean Hannity and Tucker Carlson talking about it. One American News Network. The report that they released about Dominion voting, their article about Dominion voting systems, whatever you want to call it, story, article, they specifically cited a report from a company called Edison Research that they specifically cited as the basis for their claim about Dominion. So, president of the company told the Dispatch Fact Check that they never made any report, and it simply did not exist. 700,000 ballots were not allowed to be viewed in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, which means, based on our great Constitution, we win the state of Pennsylvania. There's absolutely nothing in the Constitution to support that statement, first of all. And second of all, I don't know what he's referring to. I looked into the idea of 700,000 ballots not being viewed, searched for it, could not find anything, can't find any evidence to support that statement, not sure what he's talking about. Again, another statement by him. The consent decree signed by the Georgia Secretary of State with the approval of Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia and the urging of Stacey Abrams makes it impossible to check and match signatures on ballots and envelopes, etc. They knew they were going to cheat, must expose real signatures. According to the Associated Press fact-checking, this one is wrong as well. The Republican Secretary of State admitted that there is no such language in the decree that bans matching signatures. He also pointed out that the state even requires matching of signatures, and that in many counties, when absentee ballots are sent to voters, the officials in the county will compare the signature of the voter to the one in the voter registration files before they send it out to verify that it's the same person and not some dead person or something like that. And I'll throw in one more here before we wrap it up. As for dead people voting, many people have claimed that they're right in some cases. They're actually absolutely right in some cases. I will give people that make that claim this. It is, for whatever reason, and it just goes to show how our elections are such a mess, you know, dead people do vote for whatever reason in elections, due to error. However, here's the important part. It's usually a very small amount, not the amount of people that would be needed to give Biden the win, or Trump for that matter. All right. I need a break. I think all of you do too. This cannot come at a better time. Time for some good news. Our overlord and master, Jeff Bezos, has announced a climate change fund with $10 billion of his own money going towards fighting what he called the existential threat, with the first $791 million going towards 16 different environmental groups. It's great. NFL quarterback Alex Smith made his first start in 2 years after a leg injury that many thought he would never be able to play football again after. And this is a guy, and I'm dead serious here, almost had his leg amputated because of this injury, because of the bacterial infection. I mean, it's really inspiring. European politicians, considering making the work week only 4 days, so looks like I'm moving to Europe, along with most of America as well. A 61-year-old British diplomat saved a drowning student in China who slipped into a river while taking photographs. Reportedly, he's being considered as Daniel Craig's replacement for the next James Bond film. A study finds playing video games might be good for those that play their mental health. I just want to let my parents know here, I am not coming out of my room anymore, and it's just because I'll be playing Fortnite to work on my self-esteem and social skills. An international summit was held to lower emissions created by the shipping industry. This is awesome. I'm just worried it's going to put old Tuggy here out of a job. A delivery driver in Janesville, Wisconsin, was out delivering food when he saw a dog in the middle of the road with a collar on. He tried to get the dog out of traffic, didn't work. Eventually the dog ended up jumping in his car, so he was able to use the dog's microchip to find the owners. That's awesome. You love to hear that. The Yurok tribe in Northern California has been waiting almost 10 years for their project to launch rehabilitated condors into the wilderness, and partnered with the federal government in order to do so. They'll finally be able to receive their condors in early 2021. That'll begin breeding to repopulate the species. That's awesome. And finally, a fire department in Norfolk, Virginia, surprised their coworker's son, who was diagnosed with a rare form of lymphoma, by bringing a parade of trucks by his hospital room window, raising signs up from their ladders to his window. They even brought out Captain America for the kid. It's really great. So I hope that cheered you guys up a little bit. It shows there's some good in the world. And I guess that's our show. And, before we go, I'd like to say something, as I said I would before. Hello. Adding this in after editing. Sorry it took so long. Said I'd have this video coming out. I think last Monday I said that was not the case, although I think if you look at the runtime, you can definitely see why. Sorry about that. But like I said, I wanted to say a little something about the election, I think, at the end of this video. This, I'm not going to call this commentary. I think this is just, it's my personal opinion. I think this election was a mess. I really do. And I don't know how much of that you want to blame on coronavirus or just the way our system works in general. I mean, it was really flawed in a lot of ways. A lot of issues with claims of fraud, claims of accidents with ballots, things like that. I really just want to say, I think the one thing here that both parties can agree on is that we need more transparency and a better system of some kind. Because this clearly, you look and you see, I know this is the first year we've had something like this happen with not a lot of results in time, but you see some of these counties and you see, just this whole mess created by the media, and also like just in general with, a lot of people messing up or not doing their jobs. And by the way, with that said, there's obviously thousands, if not tens of thousands of people that have worked hard during this election and put up with way more than they should have had from, the public. So just, go, if you know someone that worked as a poll worker, just go ahead and give them a thank you. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here is we need a better system than this, because this is ridiculous. Like, let's just be honest here. This did not work for anyone, this election. So anyways, alongside that, I want to say, I know I went very, I don't know if you want to call it hard on President Trump in this video. Just want to say, I never go into a video with the intention of deliberately attacking somebody or taking them down. Like I said before the segment, my real goal here was just to try and find the truth of it all. Just try and find out, what's going on, these claims of voter fraud, how many of them are accurate, and as you saw, some of them were, but were not enough to impact the election in a significant way. Most of them weren't, to be honest. So, you can say what you will about the Republican Party and President Trump, whatever. Just at the end of the day, I don't want to hear all that. My job is just to find the truth, what's going on, and not listen to the rhetoric from both sides. So that's what I set out to do here in this video. I picked his tweets because, there is tweets. That's pretty much his method of communicating with supporters. And he's the president of the United States. I think, part of my job is also to make sure, the stuff coming out of his mouth is accurate. So, as I will be doing when Biden takes power, it's not going to change. I don't have an agenda. I'm not part of CNN or Fox, even network news. I'm a little guy. That's how it works. So, anyways, and finally, I would just like to say this. I think, in this we've seen, what am I trying to say here? I think in this election, it's been tight. It's been a tight election, obviously. Hotly contested, no doubt about that. In a lot of places it was close, others not as close. But at the end of the day, we have a winner. We have a transition of power. We have a new president, and we are a democracy, and nobody can take that away from us. God knows many have tried, but no one can take that away from us. So, to Democrats who have won, good job. Don't screw it up. Keep your promises to those you made them to. I would say the same to Republicans if they had won. And to Republicans, hey, you know what, I'm sorry, losing's tough, but Democrats have been whining and complaining about President Trump for the past 4 years. Now you get to do the same with Biden. And you're probably still going to control the Senate. So really, you're only losing the presidency. So, keep that in mind. I don't know. I think it's bittersweet for both sides either way. So, Biden, at the end of the day, is our new president. And I think it's important that no matter who's in charge, we all just work together, get through the next 6 months until they've got this vaccine thing ready to go, and just really, be there for each other. Help your neighbors, help your friends and family, and try to see the good in the world, because I think that's the most important thing we can all do at the end of the day, because there is good in everyone. So, on that cheesy note, this is the end of the video. Quick announcement. I think, as you can see, this took me forever to make. It is my longest video I've ever made, but I don't think the time put in was worth it, and especially, looking at how it's kind of late for a lot of you guys. So the way I'm going to be doing this moving forward, my goal is to put a new video out every 2 days. However, those videos are going to be a lot shorter, from either 5 to 10 minutes, and they're going to be done by segments. So what it'll look like is we'll have one video of things you need to know for this week, another video, 5 to 10 minutes, top stories from this week. Third video, the Unity segment. That's probably going to be the one I put the most effort and time into, not that I don't on all my videos. And finally, as everyone loves and knows, good news. That'll be fun. So look forward for that. And I want to make a promise to you guys. I'm going to put at least 1 to 2 videos out in the next upcoming week. Really looking forward to it. And finally, I hope all of you stay safe. I hope all of you have a great Thanksgiving, no matter who you might be spending it with. I love all of you guys, and just remember, tomorrow will be a brighter day. Have a good week, everybody.